أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين إنه خير ناصر ومعين ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين سيما بقية الله في الأراضين وحجته على الخلق أجمعين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين، واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى يوم الدين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. أما بعد، فقد قال الله الحكيم في محكم كتابه الكريم: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ومن يتق الله يجعل له مخرجا ويرزقه من حيث لا يحتسب. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآله الطاهرين.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Dear brothers and sisters in Iman, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
وعليكم السلام.
Last night mentioned this verse of Surah Al-Hujurat, wherein Allah says that the basis of this new ummah, an ummah that is supposed to comprise all human beings, all those who call themselves An-Nas, is At-Taqwa. That is the basis of their pride and their honor in this new ummah. Allah says, Ya ayyuhan nas, inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha, وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا إِنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ. There's much to talk about in this verse. The fact that Allah says all human beings are created from a single father and a single mother, a single man and a single woman. And so there isn't anything that we all have this in common, that this is not something that differentiates any one of us. We are all from a man and a woman, whether that is referring to Nabi Adam and Lady Hawa, or it is our own immediate parents. And based on this very fact, we should know the rest of the ayah. We should understand the message, which is that I cannot have pride over you because my father is greater than yours, or my mother is greater than yours, based on that fact alone. Rather, we are all from a man and a woman. But then Allah continues and He says, yes, we are all similar, but then we are also different. Allah has separated us into different tribes and different people so that we may know one another. Some of us, some tribes, some people have certain potentials and they have certain characteristics. And I should know you and you should know me. And through knowing each other, we can create a society, and inshallah, we can create a civilization that is based on this mutual respect and this mutual knowledge. But know that it is not your language that makes you superior to me, nor is it my culture, my art, my poetry, whatever I might take pride in that makes me superior to you. Rather, what makes us take pride in our own lives, what should be the source of our honor, is a taqwa. And this is a little bit, I think, for us, sort of a good slogan that we say, but we don't really mean it a lot. I mean, to be quite frank, when we look in our own society and when we look in our own lives, what are the things that we take pride in? Islamic civilization, for years, for centuries, for over a millennium, you see that there was certain things that Muslims would hold high. I mentioned that taqwa is not something that I can measure or you can measure. It's something internal. It's my relationship to Allah. How much do I factor Allah into my daily activities and into my daily decisions, into my emotions? So I can't tell you how much taqwa you have, you can't tell me how much taqwa I have. But there are certain things that are signs of taqwa, or maybe even certain situations that might increase a person's taqwa and might give them the capacity to reach their potential, might give them the space to reach their potential. There are certain things that every society does to lead them to those things that they aspire to, those values that they hold dear. Islamic civilization did this particularly well. What are the things that Muslims throughout history held up in honor and they held in prestige? Ilm, knowledge. People who are of knowledge, they held up in high esteem. Not because knowledge in and of itself was a source of pride, but because we have a hadith that knowledge is your source for getting closer to Allah. You understand the signs of the heavens and of yourself better, and that should lead you to Allah. That is what true ilm, true knowledge is. We held up, as Muslims, we hold our parents, our elders, to high esteem because they have had more opportunity. They have prayed more, they have fasted more than I have. They have spoken to Allah more. They have lived a life that they thought was a good life, taking them closer to Allah. What are the physical marks that we had in Islamic civilization? Yes, we had and we have palaces and we have cities that have been created that are beautiful cities. But the landmarks that have remained, the most beautiful landmarks that have remained from Islamic civilization for years, for centuries, and for over a millennium have been mosques, masajid, have been places of ziyarat. Go and see how much Muslims invest in their places of worship. Not just in mosques, in places of ziyarat, in khanaqahs, in whatever other place that a person speaks to Allah. Yes, again, there are palaces as well, because in the end of the day, every society needs a ruler. And those rulers will take advantage of their power and they will build themselves something glorious and something grand. But at the same time, Muslims valued their places where they spoke to Allah, where they could build on their taqwa. A masjid, a beautiful masjid, is not necessarily going to produce muttaqeen, but it is going to increase my possibility for me to get closer to Allah. It's that increased possibility. When you look in our society, the place that we live in, how much time do we spend in the masjid? Want to think about what we value as a people? How much time do we spend in the masjid versus at work? What is the amount of money that we invest in our masajid? And what are the landmarks that are going to be left for generations to come? What are the things that we take pride in this society? The buildings, usually in Charlotte, of course, you have huge towers for banks, for financial institutions. And in other places, you have what is materially valuable. Companies that produce material wealth, material comfort. We have some of the most advanced weapon systems that we keep sending to other countries to commit genocide against innocent populations. just recently I read the news that the 500-ton bombs, 500-pound bombs, 500-ton bombs, these huge weapon systems are being sent to a particular state to destroy and kill women, children of the people of Gaza and of Greater Palestine. That is the thing that we invest in our society. The most advanced weapon systems. We put our money into it. We put our greatest brains into those industries, and we take pride in them. Who else? We have the greatest army and military the world has ever seen. And the result of that greatest army and greatest technology, the thing that we take pride in, is destruction, is the killing of children. So if you want to think about what is the basis and the aspiration of our civilization, you just have to look at the effects. And this isn't too far, right? We talk about the society out there. We also have to talk about the society that we are creating amongst ourselves. I don't want to, the board did not mention, to mention financial sort of issues, but we have to think about how much do we invest in our homes. I've heard the housing prices in this area have gone up. So whether it's $300,000, $500,000, or $1 million, whatever you spend in your own home, how much do you spend in your house versus how much do I spend at the masjid? How much do I invest in the thing that is going to keep my spirit and the spirit of my children alive, the religion intact, versus how much comfort, material and physical comfort, do I provide for them and for the rest of my community? How much love do I have? How much time do I spend with my brothers and sisters in Iman versus I spend with my fellow co-workers? People that I have no relation to, and one day they're going to go there and live their own lives, and I'm going to live my own life. And this is both something that we as adults, but as well we as children have to think about. And our children, we have to make them think, what is the thing that we take pride in? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala. And this brings me to the words of Abu Abdullah, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Imam I mentioned last night these words of Abu Abdullah, Imam al-Hussein, these words that he wrote to his brother Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiya in the city of Medina, where the Imam says, the basis for my mission, basis for me rising up, إني لم أخرج أشرا ولا بطرا ولا مظلما ولا فاسدا or ولا مفسدا ولا ظالما. I am not rising up because of any vanity in me, nor because I want to cause any corruption in the land. وإنما خرجت صلوا على محمد
اللهم صل على محمد
وإنما خرجت لطلب الإصلاح في أمة جدي. The reason I am rising up is because I want to invoke an islah, fixing and a resolving of the situation of the ummah of my grandfather. Imam says, I want to do Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahy anil Munkar wa asira bi sirati jaddi wa abi. And I want to lead the life of my grandfather and my father. In another instance, when the Imam had left to the city of Mecca, in one of the reports in the history of this journey of Imam Hussein, it is said that Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiya, in one of these reports, he comes to the city of Mecca. He had heard that Imam Hussein had made the decision to go towards the city of Kufa. And Muhammad wants to speak to the Imam. wants to give the Imam some advice. And it is said that he asks the Imam, don't you know that these people of Kufa, they are the people who betrayed your father? Every time Amir al-Mu'mineen called them to battle, some of the Kufans gave one excuse or another. There were times when they were ready to fight, and then they would go out into the battlefield, and then all of a sudden they would lose their courage. Or there were times when after years of fighting they became tired, and they did not want to complete the mission that Amir al-Mu'mineen sent them to. And then you get to the time of Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam, and the people of Kufa would leave the Imam all alone. Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiya is saying all of these things to Abu Abdullah. And of course Abu Abdullah knows all of these things. He was there in the battle. He was there at the scene of the crime, so to speak. Then the Imam says, what would you have me do? The Imam has left his hometown. He has sought refuge in the Haram of Allah, the refuge of the Muslims. There's not anyone supposed to be harmed in Mecca. The Imam asks him, what am I supposed to do? Muhammad ibn Hanafiya, he says, well, go to, if you, for example, send your messenger, Muslim ibn Aqil, then wait for him to respond. See what he says. But don't just rely on that. If these people do not relent, then you can go somewhere else. The Imam says, this is an important point. I mentioned in the last few nights that the Imam knew the Prophet had prophesied to Abu Abdullah, that he knew what was to come. He knew that he is going to be martyred in a land called Karbala. And he knew that it was going to be the ummah of the Prophet that is going to commit, the ummah of himself, Rasulullah, that is going to commit this heinous crime. And so sometimes we might ask ourselves, why would the Imam begin this journey when he knows that he is going to be killed? Don't we have in the Quran, in Surah Al-Baqarah, وَأَنْفِقُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ وَلَا تُلْقُوا بِأَيْدِيكُمْ إِلَى التَّهْلُكَةِ? Don't we have in the Quran that you have to give in the path of Allah, but then you should not throw yourself into misfortune and destroy your own soul, destroy yourself, in other words, cause yourself to be killed. وَأَحْسِنُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. In other words, is it allowed for a person who is ma'soom, like the Imam, to go towards something that he knows is going to ultimately lead to his death? This is a complicated question because on the one hand, we have to ask ourselves, what is the knowledge that an Imam has? This is a theological question. What is the extent of the Imam's knowledge? I want to put that question to the side. If we want to discuss that, we can discuss that at a later time. But whatever amount of knowledge the Imam has, the Imam knew that Rasulullah had prophesied and that he is going to meet his own demise in this land and on his mission towards saving the Muslim Ummah. And this goes back to my conversation and my discussion in these past few nights. What is the purpose of Taqwa? What does Taqwa give to us that we cannot get from any other virtue that we can aspire to? One of the most beautiful verses of the Quran where Allah talks about the benefits of Taqwa is where Allah talks about how Taqwa gives the person who is muttaqi a vision, an ability to see into the future, ability to have patience in the face of impending doom. This is also something that when we think about the people of Gaza, sometimes we might ask ourselves, how can they bring themselves for 75 years, in fact, even longer, for 100 years, to fight against an oppression that has constantly been either killing them or sending them as refugees out of their homes. For over 100 years, generation after generation. What is it that gives a people the strength to continue? Not just give in, move to another land. Many have moved, but then many have stayed in their homes, and they have refused to give up. This is one of the most beautiful aspects of taqwa. Allah says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا إن تتقوا الله يجعل لكم فرقانا ويكفر عنكم سيئاتكم ويغفر لكم والله ذو الفضل العظيم. O you who believe, Muslims. In the Quran, a lot of times when Allah speaks about Ya ayyuhal ladina amanu, al-mu'minun, He is talking to all Muslims. In tattaqullah, yaj'al lakum furqan. Allah will give you the criteria. He will allow you to see good versus evil, what is true and what is false. He will allow you to have that criteria based upon which you can live a good life and you can meet a good end. I've been reciting this verse in the beginning of my lectures in these past few nights, where Allah says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ومن يتق الله يجعل له مخرجا ويرزقه من حيث لا يحتسب. Whoever has taqwa, Allah will give him a way out. He will give him a refuge and a sanctuary. And He will give him from that which He will sustain him an amount that you cannot even count for. So Allah, He is telling us that taqwa, when those who have taqwa, they are compared with people who do not have taqwa. The people who have taqwa, they have a certain vision and a certain insight into the reality of this world that the people who do not have taqwa cannot even bear. And so when a person who does not consider Allah in his life, when he compares himself and when he sees someone who does not have taqwa, he says, what a terrible end he is going to come to. What a bad decision he has made. But a person who has a different set of criteria, he says, this action of mine, because it is for God and it is with God, Allah is going to give me a compensation that no one else can promise me. And we see this throughout the Quran. One of the beautiful stories, Allah Himself says that this is Ahsanul Qasas, is in Surah Yusuf. What a beautiful story where Allah, He hides things from the people and then He reveals the message behind those events, the upshot, the value of those events at a later time, so long as people have taqwa. Allah says in Surah Yusuf that when the people, and many of us maybe are familiar with this story of Nabi Yusuf. What happened with Nabi Yaqub? He lost the most precious thing that Allah had given him in the form of a son, Nabi Yusuf. It's a heart-wrenching, a tragic story. Nabi Yusuf is taken away from Nabi Yaqub by his very own children, not by some stranger. And then a time comes at the end of the surah, at the end of the story, when Nabi Yusuf, they find out, the brothers of Yusuf, they find out that he is still alive. But Nabi Yaqub was still at home. And the people who had surrounded Nabi Yaqub, they were not aware of the life and the fact that Nabi Yusuf was still alive. So maybe his wives maybe the children who were left behind, maybe his grandsons, those people who had not gone to the city of Egypt, the land of Egypt, they were in the blind. They weren't aware that Nabi Yusuf was still alive. And Nabi Yaqub had spent his entire life crying over this separation from Yusuf. And so his family was aware. They were maybe even becoming tired of the sorrow of Nabi Yaqub. In Surah Yusuf, Allah says, وَلَمَّا فَصَلَتْ الْعِيرُ قَالَ أَبُوهُمْ إِنِّي لَأَجِدُ رِيحَ يُوسُفَ. When the caravan, the brothers of Nabi Yusuf, were coming back from Egypt, they were carrying with themselves, by the command of Yusuf, the shirt of Yusuf, of Nabi Yusuf, to give to their father. And when they are on their way back, Nabi Yaqub, he says, قَالَ أَبُوهُمْ إِنِّي لَأَجِدُ رِيحَ يُوسُفَ. I have found the smell of my dear Yusuf. Think about that relationship of Nabi Yaqub to his son. And then it continues. The response that his family gives is this. قَالُوا تَاللَّهِ إِنَّكَ لَفِي ضَلَالِكَ الْقَدِيمِ. They didn't have that vision, that insights that Nabi Yaqub had. How do they respond? Indeed, you are in your ancient, your old misguidance. You think that Yusuf is still alive, and you're still in search of your Yusuf. And you might even smell the smell of Yusuf. But this is that same misguidance that you had before. قَالَ. When the caravan comes back, the brothers of Yusuf, they are carrying this shirt of their brother. And they hand it to their father, and they place it upon his eyes. And Allah cures that blindness that had befallen Nabi Yaqub. Everyone was shocked. All of the family of Nabi Yaqub were shocked. And then Nabi Yaqub, he says something beautiful. قَالَ أَلَمْ أَقُلْ لَكُمْ إِنِّي أَعْلَمُ مِنَ اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. I know something from my Lord, that which you do not know. This is a constant theme throughout the Quran. In Surah Yasin, when that person from the farthest reaches of the city, he comes running to his own people, saying, listen to the word of the prophets, because they do not call you to anything except for the worship of Allah. And then his people respond by killing that messenger. Then Allah continues. In Surah Yusuf, before this verse, Allah says, وَلَا نُضِيعُ أَجْرَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. This is ayah number 56 and 57. Allah says, we do not waste, we do not squander the compensation of those who do good. وَلَأَجْرُ الْآخِرَةِ خَيْرٌ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَكَانُوا يَتَّقُونَ. We do not squander the compensation of those who do good, and the compensation in the hereafter is better for those who believe while they have taqwa. Allah here says that don't think that your compensation is just for the hereafter. There is going to be a compensation in this world as well. If you have taqwa, that Allah is going to open your sights into living a good life and having a good end in this very world. So don't just expect it in some other place, in some other time. If you want to live a good life, have that taqwa, have that basira that taqwa brings. And then we come to Yusuf himself. In Surah Yusuf, ayah number 90, Allah says, in the words of the brothers of Yusuf, when they find out that Nabi Yusuf is still alive, قَالُوا أَإِنَّكَ لَأَنْتَ يُوسُف. They are surprised by the fact that Yusuf is still alive. And by the fact that Yusuf is not just some normal person, but Allah has raised him to the greatest ranks in this world. He has given him all of the material comforts that anyone could possibly imagine at that time. More than the brothers could even imagine for themselves. قالوا أئنك لأنت يوسف؟ قال أنا يوسف وهذا أخي قد من الله علينا إنه من يتقي ويصبر فإن الله لا يضيع أجر المحسنين. This is, I am Yusuf, and this is my brother. Allah has given us a certain man. He has given us something that we could have not possibly expected. Whoever has taqwa and whoever has patience, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُضِيعُ أَجْرَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Allah does not squander the compensation of those who do good. صلوا على محمد وعلى Let's come back to the conversation or the question that I posed earlier on. When we look at the life of Imam Hussein, this journey towards the land of Karbala, on the one hand, we know that the Imam knows what the end, what the conclusion of this story is going to be. But on the other hand, the Imam knows his responsibility in relation to Allah. And this is a lesson for all of us. That we have to, at different parts in our lives, decide what is going to take priority in my life. There are different responsibilities that we have, and we have to prioritize certain responsibilities over others. Do I have a responsibility towards creating a good life, a comfortable life for myself and for my family? Yes, we all have that responsibility. And we have to try our darndest, our hardest, to fulfill that responsibility. But we also have a responsibility to satisfy and to quench that spiritual thirst that we have and our children have. And so we have to prioritize certain things over other things. And so Imam Hussein, when he's speaking to his brother Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiya, according to this one report, the Imam gives a certain priorities. He says, first of all, what do I do with all of these letters that the people of Kufa have sent me? Yes, maybe I will meet my end. But what do I do with this responsibility now that I have towards the people of Kufa? I mentioned the other night, thousands upon thousands of letters streaming into Abu Abdullah, Imam al-Hussein. And the bay'ah of thousands and thousands of people given to Muslim ibn Aqil. And Muslim testifies to this bay'ah. So the question becomes, the Imam is faced with two different responsibilities. Either he has to save his own life, or he has to live up to the responsibility of going and doing Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahy anil Munkar when the situation has created itself. This is the same situation that Amirul Mu'mineen, Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, found himself. He mentions this in Nahjul Balagha, that there was a time that came after I had been passed over. This is Amirul Mu'mineen speaking. Amirul Mu'mineen had been passed over time after time after time for 35 years. And then all of a sudden, the Muslims realized that there was not going to be anyone who was going to save them from impending doom except for Amirul Mu'mineen. And he says that people were falling over themselves, and they were, na'udhu billah, they were about to put Hassan and Hussein in harm. And then I felt this responsibility that I could not shirk anymore. I could not leave aside anymore. When all of these people came to me and they were willing to give their bay'ah to Amirul Mu'mineen, he accepted. An Imam who had said that this Khilafah is not worth even the sandal that I am repairing in my hands right now. It's not worth even, it's a very graphic image, even the snot of an animal. It's not even worth the least thing that you can imagine, the least valuable thing that you can imagine. When Imam Hussein, he sees all of these people are pledging their allegiance, he says, my responsibility towards Allah is greater than my responsibility to save my own life. And then it continues. The Imam says, all right, give me all of your advice. The Imam says, Ya akhi, قد خفت أن يغتالني يزيد بن معاوية بالحرم. People say, why don't you stay here? This is the haram, the sanctity, the sanctuary of Allah. You are safe here. And Imam says, oh my brother, I am afraid that the sanctuary of Allah is going to be defiled by Yazid ibn Muawiyah, who is going to come and kill me. فَأَكُونَ الَّذِي يُسْتَبَاحُ بِهِ حُرْمَتُهُ حُرْمَةُ هَذَا الْبَيْتِ. That my blood, and I do not want to have that on my shoulder, that the sanctuary of Allah is going to be defiled because of my blood. And we see just in a few years that Yazid commits this heinous act as well. He sets the Kaaba itself ablaze. He catapults Mecca and they destroy the Kaaba. Other claimants to the Khilafat, Abdullah ibn Zubayr, he took sanctuary in the Kaaba and around the Kaaba. He prioritized his own life over the sanctity of the Kaaba itself. Whereas Imam Hussein did not do that. He said the sanctuary of the Kaaba is greater than what I want to bear on the Day of Judgment, his relationship with Allah. And then when he is pressed even more, the Imam says, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله that it is the responsibility of every Muslim من رأى سلطانا جائرا مستحلا لحرم الله ناكثا لعهد الله مخالفا لسنة رسول الله. If a person sees that a ruler is unjust, he is committing oppression, and he is making what is haram and what is forbidden by Allah, he is making that halal, and he is going and enacting those actions, those things that Allah has prohibited. And he is breaking the covenants of Allah. You think about the covenants that Allah has placed with all of the people of this world, with Banu Israel, with the Nasara, the Christians, and with the Muslims themselves. If a hakim is oppressing his people and he is enacting what Allah has prohibited, and he is breaking his covenants with Allah, مُخَالِفًا لِسُنَّةِ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ, and he is going against the tradition and the want of Rasulullah. If a person sees this, we're not talking about the person who is in charge. We're talking about Muslims who are witnessing a ruler who is unjust. كَانَ حَقِيقًا عَلَى اللَّهِ أَنْ يُدْخِلَهُ مَدْخَلًا. If a person witnesses an unjust ruler and he stands there and he does not do anything, whatever he can, praying for Allah to bring low this Sultan Jahil, or if he has material ability, or if he has political voice, whatever means he can do to stop this oppression from continuing. It is a right of Allah, كَانَ حَقِيقًا عَلَى اللَّهِ, for Allah to make that person enter into the ultimate place and the ultimate abode of that Sultan Jahil. In other words, Allah will make that person who bears witness and does not do anything against that oppressive ruler. He bears witness to all of the acts and he does not lift a single hand. That person is going to have the same end as that oppressive ruler. And so these are some of the reasons that Abu Abdullah gives. And he gives many other reasons. He says that these people are not going to give me any refuge wherever I might go. And so, if you tell me to go to Yemen, you tell me to go to the farthest lands, don't think that I am going to be safe. So I'm going to stand up and I'm going to fulfill that responsibility that I have to Allah. And we see this not just in the highest example of taqwa, in the message and in the person of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, but we see this happening with the other ashab of Amir al-Mu'mineen as well. One of those examples is in the example of a man by the name of Maytham al-Tamman. Maytham was killed before he could witness the events of Karbala. He was residing in the city of Kufa. And it is said that Maytham was one of the closest companions to Amir al-Mu'mineen. And Amir al-Mu'mineen had told him and had prophesied the death of Maytham. And I want to give this as an example of what it means to have taqwa in action and for a person to see what others cannot see, what others are blind to. It is said that one day Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib asked Maytham, "Oh Maytham, oh Maytham, do you want to know how you are going to reach your end? You are going to reach your death." Maytham says, "Am I going to be on the right path, O Amir al-Mu'mineen?" Imam Ali says, "Yes, you are going to be upon that oath, that path that you have lived your life upon." And Maytham says, "I will accept whatever end that might be." It is said that Amir al-Mu'mineen tells Maytham that one day a governor is going to come to this city and he is going to take you because of your love for me, because of your love for Ali. And he is going to crucify you upon this tree. In certain ahadith, Amir al-Mu'mineen says he is going to cut off your limbs. And he is even going to cut out your tongue. And then he is going to crucify you upon this tree. What would I do if I were in the place of Maytham? I would try to find the farthest ends of the earth, as far away from that tree as I could possibly do. But a person like Maytham, a person with taqwa, a person who knows and has love for Amir al-Mu'mineen, what does Maytham do? It is said that Maytham, he goes and he pays homage to that tree. Maybe Maytham, he goes and waters the tree. It is said that Maytham goes and prays next to the tree and he speaks to that tree. He says, "You are going to be the means by which I show my love towards Ali ibn Abi Talib." He does not run away from his death. He welcomes it with open arms because he knows ultimately we are all going to die. Abu Abdullah, he says, "Sa'amdi wa ma lil mawti wa ma bil mawti arun ala al fata idha ma nawa haqqan wa jahada muslima wa asar rijal as-salihin bi nafsihi wa faraqa mathburan yaghushu wa yurghama." Imam Hussein, he says, "I know that I am going to die. I know that I am going to pass away. But for a person, for a young and virtuous man, death is not something to be afraid of. Death is not a defect. إِذَا مَا نَوَى حَقًّا وَجَاهَدَهُ مُسْلِمًا." If so long as that young and chivalrous man, he intends what is true, and he fights while he is Muslim and while he is subservient to Allah. And for such a person, the people who are honest and the people who are righteous, they will take his path as a model. And they will hold him to the highest honor and to the highest privilege. and he will separate himself from those who are debased and those who are afraid. Maytham, he welcomes this tree with open arms. And it is said in certain reports that he goes and he prays next to this tree until finally a time comes when Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, he comes and he calls Maytham towards himself. And it is said that Ubaydullah, he crucifies Maytham and he cuts off his limbs and he leaves his tongue, because Maytham had told him that this was the prophecy of Ali ibn Abi Talib. And Ubaydullah wanted to falsify that prophecy. He wanted to say that, yes, your Imam, maybe he prophesied this, but I'm going to say that your Imam has lied. But then when Maytham is crucified, his body is losing all of the blood and he is feeling that pain of his death coming closer and closer to him. It is said that Maytham, he recounts the words of Amirul Mu'mineen. He recounts the fada'il of Ali ibn Abi Talib. And Ubaydullah has no other recourse but to cut out the tongue of Maytham and to silence Maytham. And this is the sunnah of the ashab of Aba Abdullah. This is the night of Habib ibn Madahir. It is said that one day, Maytham and Habib, these two companions, these two dear friends, they meet each other in the streets of Kufa. It is said that Maytham is riding on his horse and Habib is riding from the opposite way. And their two horses meet. And the people that surrounded them, they were bearing witness to these two close friends speaking to each other. It is said that a time comes when the two horses, they want to separate from themselves. And Habib looks to Maytham and he says, "Oh Maytham, I see a person who is going to be crucified because of his love for Ali." And then Maytham looks to Habib and he says, "Oh Habib, I see a person in front of me, oh Habib, who is going to be sacrificed for the grandson of Rasulullah, protecting and defending Aba Abdullah." The time comes on the day of Ashura when Habib gives that final sacrifice. It is said that before the day of Ashura, Aba Abdullah was looking left and right. He was looking out into the farthest horizon. It seemed as though Aba Abdullah was waiting for someone to come and join his camp. And it is said that Habib, they see this horse and this man coming from the farthest horizons until he gets closer and closer and closer. And Imam Hussein looks to Habib. Habib was in the city of Kufa. And he finally gets the message that Aba Abdullah has alighted and has come upon the plains of Karbala. And so Habib does whatever he can to get himself towards Aba Abdullah. And when Habib finally gets to Imam Hussein, it is said that Imam Hussein looks to Habib and he says to him, "What has taken you so long, O Habib, to come to us? We have been waiting for you." It is said that on the day of Ashura, Aba Abdullah looks to the sky. One of his companions says, "Oh Aba Abdullah, it is the time for prayer." And Aba Abdullah, he says, "Thank you, O companion of mine, for reminding us of the time of prayer. Ajarak Allah." And it is said that when the mu'adhin begins to sound the call of adhan, the enemy soldiers, they shout out, "Oh Aba Abdullah, O Hussein, you think that your prayer is going to be accepted when you are rising up against the Khalifatul Muslimin?" This is the level that the Muslims had fallen to. They think that Aba Abdullah's prayer is not even going to be accepted. And so Habibi responds. He says, "Oh you enemy soldiers, how far you have fallen. You think that the prayer of the grandson of Rasulullah is not going to be accepted and your prayer is going to be accepted? And Habib looks to his Imam and he says, "Oh my Imam, can I go out and fight and respond to this evil man?" And it is said that the Imam gives him permission and Habib goes out and he fights. Habib was not a young man. He had seen many battles, but he had grown old. It is said that Habib was one of the oldest companions of Abu Abdullah. And yet Habib fights a brave fight. And he strikes down that enemy of Abu Abdullah and he falls to the ground. And it is said that the companions of that evil man, they come now and they surround Habib. And it is said that Habib is struck from left to right until he falls to the ground. And then Abu Abdullah, he looks to his friend Habib, he looks to this companion, and he says, "Oh Habib, you have met your end, and what a good end it is." And then it is said that Habib's head is severed from his body. And that head of Habib is carried throughout the different towns. And then until it gets to the city of Kufa. Oh my brothers and sisters in Iman. It is said that this head of Habib is carried in those streets. And the man who was carrying that head of Habib, in one of the reports, it is said that he sees a young man following behind him. And he is suspicious of this youth. He asks the youth, youth, oh young man, why are you following me so closely? Why are you looking at the head of this man that I carry?" He says, "You are carrying the head of my father. I am the son of Habib. Will you not give me the head of my father so I can bid him farewell?" And it is said that evil man was not willing to give that young boy the head of his father. But there is one head that is given to the child of another man in the city of Sham. A head is brought to another child in the dungeons of Yazid. It is the head of Abu Abdullah. On that day, it is said that Imam Hussein's young daughter, she is crying and she is praying. She is asking for her father. She is calling out to her father, "Oh my father, where have you gone? Why have you left us? We have been tortured. We have been beaten. We have been carried through the streets. And they have defiled. And they have done whatever they could to dishonor and disrespect us. Oh my father, where are you now?" And then it is said that these words reach the ears of Yazid. And this evil man, he says, "Go and take the head of her father and give it to her so that she may reach some peace." And it is said that the head of Imam Hussein is given to his daughter, and his daughter holds the head of Abu Abdullah. It is said that the daughter of Abu Abdullah, she says to her father's head, "Ya Abata, man alladhi khadamaka bidamik?" Oh my father, who is the one who has died and has colored your face with your own blood? Who is the one who has cut off your head from your body? Man alladhi aitamani ala saghar sinni? Who is the one who has made me into an orphan, even though I am so young? وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلَبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ.
إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون.